Hi, this is Paul Sackis, Good News Broadcast. I'm speaking to Tom Anelli. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Okay, good. You're a senior attorney and founder of New York State's largest DWI defense firm, Anelli Xavier. Okay, DWI stands for?
Driving while intoxicated.
Okay, they call you the DWI guy. And that's, I don't think, because you drive when you're intoxicated. Why did you focus on this part of the law? And why is it law?
Well, what I found was, it is law for obvious reasons, that driving while your ability is impaired or while you're intoxicated or under the influence of alcohol is dangerous. And a lot of folks have seen the horrible effects of driving while intoxicated. Myself, probably more so than most. I mean, I see the horrible effects of driving while intoxicated on both sides of each case. I see the effects it has on the defendant's life, and I also look at pictures of victims, which are quite horrendous at times. So I've seen probably more than most the horrible effects of DWI, and that's why we have these laws. My wife and kids drive on the same roads you guys do, and it's it's for everybody's safety.
No doubt about it. It's a very serious issue. I agree, and it's irresponsible. I guess we'll all agree that driving while intoxicated, it's proven that your senses are just not as clear as they normally are, which is difficult to drive to begin with.
Sure.
So National Child Safety Passenger Week expands your efforts, and for the past 26 years, National Child Safety Passenger Week has emphasized the safe transport of children through correct use of car seats and safety restraints. So this is that kind of part of the time of the year. Tell us some good things that people should be considering.
Well, with the advent, at least here in New York, of Leandra's Law, folks have been paying particular attention to the safety of children in cars, and folks who may have had, you go to a kid's birthday party, and sometimes they'll ask you if you want an adult beverage, and they'll have a beer while they're with the kids at the birthday party, or a glass of wine, or what have you. These things, you need to pay particular attention to situations where you're driving, in particular with yourself, but also with your kids in the car. And this is what Leandra's Law, at least the advent of Leandra's Law, is really about. Somebody calls, you're at a party, hey, we forgot the kids have to be ran to so-and-so's house. It's not always as it seems when folks are talking about this, like, oh, I would never do that. Of course, in our right mind, at the right time, none of us would ever do it. It's one of those situations where, you're out mowing the lawn with a couple beers on the John Deere, and then the wife calls and says, oh, Johnny's got to be over at soccer practice at 2 o'clock, and it's 1:45, and you're the only one who can take Johnny unless you call somebody and say, I'm drunk, or something of that sort, and you don't think anything of it. So it's very safe to fall into these situations where you didn't plan on driving, and you certainly didn't plan on driving drunk with your kids in the car, and it could still happen. And Leandra's Law has made that a Class E felony under New York's law, which is obviously a very serious offense.
Felony, wow, okay. I just interviewed, yesterday it was, Dr. Wesley Clark, who's the head of the substance abuse for America, I believe. And we talked about I remember an old PSA that had a pretty powerful imprint, and it's been around a long time, about the alcohol quantity of a beer, a glass of wine, and hard liquor.
Sure.
I believe it was like 12 ounces of beer, an ounce and a half of alcohol, and maybe 8 ounces of wine, all equaled each other. Does that seem to be sensible?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
So here's something to consider as it is. And I know that but beers go down easy, and especially on a hot day, right?
Right.
And a hot day also, there's another concern, right, too, because if you have a drink and it's very warm outside, I think I learned, actually I had a drink and I just sat down by a pool on a hot day this summer, one of these scorchers, right? Mm-hmm. And I learned, because I semi-fainted, and they said that alcohol depletes the water inside of you as well.
Sure, yeah, it does act to dehydrate the body.
So that's another consideration, to drink responsibly, right? I guess is what it boils down to.
Of course, yeah, sure.
So now, are there other things that people should know here in this Child Safety Passenger Week?
Well, Leandra's law here in New York is called the Child Passenger Protection Act, and it also does one other thing, and it makes it. And New York has kind of taken a stand on this, and one of the few states that have taken it this far. Whereas individuals who are found guilty of a first offense DWI, as long as they're found guilty of the misdemeanor or offense, are going to be subject to the interlock restriction, which means they're going to have a device that they have to blow into before they can start their car for a minimum of 6 months. Everybody found guilty of a misdemeanor DWI in New York State is going to have to be have these on every vehicle that the family owns that they may drive. So the kids are going to have to use it. Everybody's going to have to use it. If you have an 18-year-old kid who uses the family car to go to work, he's going to be blowing in that device because daddy made a mistake or daddy drove drunk. So these are it's a pretty serious effort to end drunk driving, to stop the recidivism, to have folks not out there drinking and driving on the roads. And New York is really taking a strong stance on it.
How do they deal with drugs?
Not as easy and not as easily addressed by the device. I mean, these devices are really addressing alcohol and sense alcohol vapor in the breath, and they're actually doing some different stuff where ambient air in the car might be able to be tested, or even the steering wheel can test individuals' hands, the sweat on the hands before the car will start. They're thinking about doing that thing across the board, and obviously there's people for and against those types of measures. But to answer your question more directly in terms of drugs, there is legislation obviously against driving cars under the influence of drugs. It's called DWAI here in New York, anyways, and it's driving with ability impaired by drugs. And there's a list of enumerated drugs. But what happens is sometimes folks will also have not even just illegal drugs. There's certain prescription drugs that it's illegal to drive under, and things of that nature. And there's lots of different enumerated drugs on that list, as well as recreational drugs that are illegal. Folks tend to drive on, particularly marijuana.
Okay. So, what do we suggest here to do?
Well, A, if you're going to go out and you're going to have a good time and your plans involve drinking, please don't drive. B, if you are a recreational user of marijuana and things like that, please don't get behind the wheel. Regardless of what your take is on the legalization of marijuana, please don't get behind the wheel after having smoked marijuana. And also, please recognize that if you are going to get behind the wheel of a car and your kids are going to be in the back seat, be particularly attentive to the amount of alcohol, if any, you've had, because the consequences are doubled for obvious reasons, and the circumstances become much graver when it involves children, and like I said, for obvious reasons.
Okay, and I'll just add in one more aspect to this, since I did a few interviews with this MAD organization, where I learned that don't walk around drunk either, because in essence you have the potential, one, of hurting yourself, or two, causing the car accident, because you're drunk and you walk on the street and you veer because your balance isn't correct, right? You veer into the road, and now you're the instigator of a very bad accident.
Sure.
It's all not so good. All right, but let's talk last good news, though. What's good news, Tom? Good
news is, I think the good news is society in general is becoming much more intentional about taking this problem seriously. Alcohol addiction is a problem, and driving while intoxicated is a problem. And the more we all work together to intentionally do what we're doing right now, just discuss these things, the better things are going to get. The more educated people are going to become about it, and I think the more it's going to be a problem that we get under wraps to some degree, and we take the more seriously we take it, and the more we realize it's a problem, the more likely we are going to be able to at least quell it or reduce it. And I think that's the good news.
Okay, and I'm just going to throw one thing else in, and don't be afraid to mention something to somebody when you go out partying or you go here and there. Don't worry about being a nag. Don't worry about being anything. You see someone who's not in a good situation, offer them your house or whatever to sleep in, blah, 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 right? Wouldn't you suggest that as a good thought as well?
Yeah, we all like to go out and have a great time. I mean, there's very few of us who don't use alcohol to that end, and it's pretty easy, to do so in a nice way. It's pretty easy to say, hey, not for nothing, it looks like you've had a few too many, let's hang out, let's go hang out at this diner that we can walk to, or let's, let me drive you home, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, pay attention to folks and make sure they're not getting behind the wheel in an unsafe manner, because it's real easy to see who those folks are at the end of the evening generally.
There you go. Okay, Tom, thank you very much for sharing good news with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.